In the second video, we're going to take a look at a much deeper question, not just about poles, not about fields, but basically what is the source of magnetism? Well, you should be able to tell me that the source of magnetism is any moving charge. And that's accurate, but that's not enough detail. Okay, you might say, well, I know that one form of moving charge is an electromagnet. So we have wires that carry electrons. And if there's a current in this wire, that would create a magnetic field. And that's true. The shape of the magnetic field would actually be a circle around that wire. That would be the B field. And that is a pretty straightforward, easy to understand example. What explains the moving charges in a bar magnet? It's just sitting on a shelf. It's in a toy. It's on the refrigerator door. But how are there moving charges in there? Well, you have to remember that you have to look sometimes at a scale that we can't relate to if you go to the atomic scale. So what we're going to do is we're going to examine ferromagnetism. Ferromagnetism is quite common. Ferromagnetism involves the elements iron, nickel, or cobalt, but that's not really why it's called, well, originally that's why it's called ferromagnetism. Ferro, Latin for ferrous, and the name, of course, of the symbol for iron, right? Fe. And what goes on at the atomic level in ferromagnetic materials is there is unpaired electrons with aligned spin. And it's also called spin coupling. Whoa, what? How did we just jump into electron spin when that hasn't been part of anything we've really done in physics? So if you were to take the element iron, and I bet some of you remember this thing called an orbital notation or an electron configuration. But the element iron is, how many rows down is it? I think it's 4 rows down. And if you were to do the electron configuration, and if you really remember your stuff, you start with the element argon, which is the previous Nobel gas. And then you look at how many electrons does it have in its outer energy level. And it would have 4s. And I bet some of you remember that one way to show that would be a box that shows the electrons. And when they're paired up like this, they seem to always have opposite spin. And so those are not magnetic, but those are moving electrons, and they're not magnetic because they cancel each other out. And then, if you really remember your orbitals, you remember that the 3D sublevel and the orbitals that it has 5 discrete orbitals. There we go. Should have done that a little bit better spacing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those 5 3D orbitals have to have 4 more electrons in them. And how that would line up would be 1, 2, 3. Actually, it's more than that. It's 6 more. I'm so sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what you get is you get several electrons that do not have electron pairs or electron partners. And you might say, but I don't get it. Well, spin is a type of motion. It is a type of moving charge. And you may remember that spin comes in 2 types. It's a quantum property. It's upspin and downspin, right? If you've ever taken more advanced chemistry, it's sometimes called +1/2 and -1/2. But either way, they are opposite spin directions. And every time the electrons pair, they're always opposite spin, and their magnetic fields cancel. But this electron has its own north and south, and this one has its own north and south. So every electron that is unpaired is itself a small magnet, or a small, almost like compass needle. That's what a compass is, after all, a small magnetic needle. And so if each of these electrons spins the same way, well, what we get is we get an iron atom that's magnetic. And yes, every iron atom is magnetic. Now, quite a few of you have some pretty advanced chemistry skills, and you might say there's many other elements that have unpaired electrons like this, and they're not all magnetic. Well, some of them are. However, nickel, iron, and cobalt exhibit ferromagnetism, which is quite strong. There's also paramagnetism. And paramagnetism is a weaker form of magnetism that also has to do with electron spin, but it's a much weaker case. For example, liquid oxygen is actually magnetic. It will stick to a north and south magnet, but it itself does not create magnetic fields. So if you really want to learn more about magnetism, there's some pretty exotic types. But ferromagnetism is common. This is what makes, toys stick together. So if every atom of iron is a magnet, then why isn't every piece of iron, right? You could have an iron bar or an iron nail that is not magnetic. So what must be going on? But essentially, it comes down to unpaired electrons create magnetic fields, right? Because they're all moving in the same direction. That creates a magnetic field. Now, if you were to want to try to erase this or delete or kind of scramble this, it's very hard to do at the atomic level. But if you have a bar magnet, if you want to erase magnetism, you could heat it, or you could actually even drop it or fracture it, and that would cause the alignment of the atoms or the spin of the atoms to be misaligned, to lose its organization. Imagine dropping a drawer of silverware where all the knives, forks, and spoons and all the other accessories are all lined up in neat little rows, and there may be their compartments, and then you drop the drawer. Well, yeah, the alignment would be gone very fast. Okay, so let's go into that question that really was, well, what makes something magnetic? Is it just alignment of atoms? Well, some materials are not magnets at all. So, for example, if you have a piece of glass or plastic or even metals that are not iron, they have no domain. So what's a domain? A domain is a region of many aligned atoms. And what are we talking about aligned atoms? We really mean their spin alignment at the atomic or subatomic level, right? We're aligning spin. So notice here, there are no regions where the electrons are all going the same direction. It's completely random, and there's in fact no domains. Now, this would be a magnetic material, maybe ferromagnetic iron. And there are sub-regions called domains where the atoms within that region will be aligned. Okay, each of these are little domains depicted kind of cartoonishly, like crystal structures. But if you look carefully, you'll notice that the upper right corner and the bottom left corner cancel each other out. And the upper left and the one below it kind of cancel each other out. So there's this region where they have domains, but not all the domains are lined up. In fact, there's some magnetic field canceling. Whereas this is an example of a strong magnet because it has strong alignment. And this would be the north and this would be the south end of this bar magnet. So this represents many domains. They are still separate, right? They're still separate regions within the crystal of the metal, and those domains are all aligned. So this explains how you can have a piece of iron that is non-magnetic but still has domains, and a piece of iron that is a magnet. How would you align those? You could use electric current to line them up. You could also use another magnet to kind of coax them into going the same way, because electron spin is a property that's quantum mechanical that can be kind of exerted on another electron. They tend to spin together. It's the lowest energy state for those electrons, is to have aligned spin. So what's a domain? It's a region of aligned atoms in a magnetic material. And if all the domains are aligned, we have a strong magnet. If the domains are random or not aligned, we have a magnetic material, but no magnetism. So this would have no poles or weak magnetism on the left or in the middle. And this guy would have, on the right, would have strong magnetic poles. Okay, so we've already taken a look at this little circle or cycle having to do with all moving charges create magnetic fields. All magnetic fields exert forces on moving charges. But what does that lead us to question? Well, How do you measure the force, right? What's this force? And it's called FB. And you may have noticed on the front page, there was a formula. FB equals QV times the B field times cosine theta. Okay, so what do we have here? We have what are called crossed product vectors. And a cross product means two vectors that are literally crossing each other. And it's not the same as multiplication because we literally are having vectors cross each other. And the way that you handle that cross product of vectors is you have to look at the component of the vector, the QV, that is perpendicular to the B field. And you say, well, wait a minute, it's completely perpendicular. Well, what if we have a velocity and a B field that are not completely perpendicular? We would have to find the component. And the component of the V field, of the velocity that is perpendicular, right, would be cosine of the angle that they cross. So we're going to get into the math of that in a bit. But the other problem is that the force that is created mathematically, all you have to do is multiply the charge Q times the velocity V times the B field times cosine theta. Not really hard, right, guys? But what direction is the force? And the reality is that it is a three-dimensional pattern. And you have to use your right hand. It's a rule or it's a principle that we've found out that basically if you want to represent vectors, your hand is a three-dimensional object, and depending on how you point things, you have to point to the right, to the left, up, down, and you could do that easily with your pointer finger. But then there's other directions that you now have to be able to point. B fields sometimes point out of the page toward the ceiling, maybe, of the screen you're looking at or of the paper that you're writing on. And then sometimes they go into the page. And how do we remember dots and X's? Well, think of this as like a topographic map, and this would be the top of a mountain, right? The peak of a mountain. Or some people say it's like the top of a pine tree, like pointing upward. And what are X's? Well, think about what a pirate does on a pirate map when they see X's. That means dig into the map, right? Or go into the sand or wherever the treasure is buried. So X means into the page, and dot means out of the page. Now, this is going to be a little hard to do on video, especially since I don't have a document camera with me while I'm recording this. But the way it works is that you basically take your right hand and turn it into a finger gun. And it has to be your right hand. And what I do is I actually take a little pen or even a Sharpie and I write things on my fingers. Okay. Now you might say, what the heck is going on here? Well, typically a finger gun is, there you go. You point your finger out and your thumb goes up. And now what I want you to do is I want you to take your middle finger. Yep, that's your middle finger there, and point it basically toward your palm. Some people find this a little hard to do, tricky with their tendons and their muscles, but this should be 90 and this should be 90, and even your thumb and your middle finger should be 90. Sometimes I have to guide people. And the way it works is you always use your right hand, never your left, and your fingers, like your pointer finger, is in the direction of velocity. So that's which way the charges are moving, and we're referring to conventional charges, so positive charge. So if it's positive, right, they're the same direction. If B is the curl of your finger, see how your middle finger tends to curl towards your palm? Well, that's the direction of your B field. So you line up this one first in a problem, and you line up this one second. And then your thumb is sometimes, well, it's not always the answer, but notice your thumb is pointing not in the direction of the velocity, not in the plane of the B field, but it's pointing straight up toward, I guess, the ceiling. And we're going to do some problems like that. So if I were to take my right hand and I were to turn my page, and I don't even know if I can do that. So I don't think I can do that, but I can turn my iPad and I'm going to make my pointer finger align with this. Can you turn your paper and have your pointer finger of your right hand straight out like you're doing finger guns, right? Line up your pointer finger with that. Then automatically,